Yep.
And and here's the thing is, when you're choosing somebody to get them to step up, one of the hardest things ever to do is to get them to buy into that situation, to
Absolutely. If
get
they're
them
not
to buy
hungry
into
for
their
that
greatness.
already, oh yeah. If they're not hungry to be having your position already, you've got to be like, come on, man. Like, I know you
Mhm.
could do this, and I want you to really help me with this. I have full faith you can handle this, even though you've never done it before. And you always got to show them too that you're not going to be upset if they do fail. Because failure to me is
Mhm.
not failure. That's growth and that's
No.
learning, you
Yeah,
know?
no, that's cold right there. That's the sauce. Like, and the
Hmm.
hardest part is like I'm very unorthodox as a leader, especially in the military, because we don't we have a lot of margin for error, but we really don't have a lot of margin for error, right? And
Yep.
the point to get across is I need you to learn this now, but I don't need you to digest it all. I just
Yeah,
need you to go
no.
look it up and figure it out. Because what'll happen is if I spoon feed it to you, it doesn't build that desire for more.
Right.
And a lot of times I got to detach and I'm like, I see you, young troop. I see you, you hungry. I see
Hmm.
you want it right now. You want it
Hmm.
all. But I'm gonna tell you one thing. I don't know it all because
Hmm.
the military has a bunch of um we have a bunch of manuals that have been written over years and they keep, getting updated every year and how we operate and how we move on the battlefield. At one point we were doing counterinsurgency. Sometimes in certain areas you're doing humanitarian relief, right? So each one of those mission sets takes something completely different.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm
And you could
like,
do that mission over again and it would be completely different than the first one.
exactly. Like this last deployment to Kuwait was totally different than what a lot of people had when they were in Kuwait and Iraq.
Yep.
And the mission was totally different. Like COVID happened, right? Like you get all these variables.
Yes. Mhm.
So my thought process is like, dog, I don't need you. I'm like, I'm an officer, so I'm like, NCO, private, even other officers. I'm like, I don't need you to know it. I just need you to know how to think about it.
Yes,
Does that make
absolutely.
sense?
Mhm, put it in
Because
your
if you're
tool
the
belt. That's
guy,
what I always say. Just because I'm
yeah,
telling you something now, you may not need it now, but you may need it later. So put it in your tool belt, and then you're like, wait, I think Shan said something to me about that at one point. Hang on. And like I always
exactly.
gave my opticians at home that I was training a notebook and a pen and told them to think of it as their optical Bible. And
Man,
if you ever have to ask me a question, write it down.
you got some fire right there, Shan. You got
You
some
know,
fire right there.
take notes.
Because my problem in Kuwait was, so what I would do just to mess them up, just to make sure they was taking notes, I would have them brief the mission after I briefed the mission.
Right.
Every day before we went out of the wire, like I was making sure I was like, look, make sure you got your pen and paper. I don't need a cell phone. Guess what? Because we don't have good signal out here. Right?
Mhm.
And you can't operate like that on the battlefield. Make
Yep.
sure you got your pen and paper. And obviously, I was kind of lenient a little bit, with some of it because sometimes just getting to take notes is a stretch, right?
Yep.
But you're
Because some people
100%
think they
right,
don't need to take notes.
including myself sometimes. I
Mhm.
be
I
having to
mean, some
check
are quite
myself.
busy,
Like,
but
I'm
I
looking at
mean,
my
you can
hands
see the
like,
notes on my phone. Like, there's so many random things that like weeks go by, and I look back at it, I'm like, um, what did I take that
exactly.
note for? Like, but it does. It's good. It's just a good tool belt to have. I like building my
Yeah,
tool belt.
that's awesome. And the more you level up, the more you actually need that. It's funny. A
Absolutely.
lot of people look at it in reverse. They're like, I'm a manager, I'm a leader now, so I don't need to do these things. And I'm like, that is exactly the reason why you need to do these things.
I like having a tool belt so that I can hand out those tools to other people that need them more than me.
Oh,
That's
that's
my
huge.
thing, like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I was around one time when that situation happened, and this is happening to you now. So this is what we need to do to prevent that from happening again. Like,
And isn't it powerful how it's that one piece of information that you
mhm,
needed that one time that's going to take you to the next level?
yep,
Like so many people, I used to think, so you remember how people used to talk about like trigonometry or math or like the highest
yeah,
levels of math and how we never use it. And I'm like, it's
mhm,
always been that one time, that one piece of knowledge or piece of wisdom that somebody tried to
yep,
implement to me. And I was like, this shit ain't relevant.
yeah, mhm.
And I was
But
like,
you never know
wow.
when it's going to become relevant,
And it,
and
it
that's
makes you
wrong
think
with having more
completely different.
knowledge. Nobody can take away the knowledge
Exactly.
of anything that you've learned,
No. And that's what one of the
but you
greatest
can
things that school
share
taught
it.
us. Yeah. Well, and one of the greatest things that school, high school, college, whatever, somebody's path, it was critical thinking skills.
Absolutely.
You're not going to retain all the knowledge.
No.
And that's what helps me get through the day. And so I think this leads into, because we talked about the notebooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about, how do you get buy-in from individuals who have potential? Because, and here's the hardest part. I've found that even when people, have potential, right? Like, even when, like, we feel like they can go and be awesome, they have to want it more than we want it for them.
Oh yeah. If somebody doesn't want to be a manager, or they don't want to grow, or they don't want to level up, don't vest in that. And you always need to find out what someone's personal